And as usual, put everyone on mute except for me and Avni as of now. Yeah. And so have you done that?
Yes, I'm doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once again, welcome everyone at Saturday 4 p.m. I think it has become a weekly affair now. And again, a warm welcome to everyone. This time we are going to have a kind of interaction with Avni Patel, a dear friend. Has been my colleague also in Countryside. Later on, she started off a company of her own and a founder member for that company called Broken Compass. And currently, she is working as a, Avni, you help me, I Center, right?
iCreate.
Yeah, as a kind of a consultant, or you head that department, isn't it?
Business incubation department.
So you head that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she and that's placed in Ahmedabad, right?
Yes.
Okay. And of course, a great photographer, a great traveler, has been into diving and scuba for a long time. I remember only our conversation when I told you that I feel claustrophobic, I will never do that. And you had kind of said that I will take you in. I still remember that. And also for many of my old kind of guests who have been with Countryside for a long period of time, we used to do an exhibition called Photolog, which was the actual exhibition, which was started also by Avni. And we then continued for a couple of years after that. Yeah. And one more thing that I got to know today was like she has also taken a formal training in Bharatnatyam. I think that is the way she juggles around and manages so many things to do at the same time. Yeah. And she's also done a triathlon in China. Am I correct?
Okay. Yes, and half Ironman.
Half Ironman. Okay. So here is Avni, and before Avni we move on, can you come to we'll go to the next slide. A quick introduction about Countryside. Countryside, we are a 27-year-old company. We started off with adventure travel as our core area. Most of the trips were trekking trips in the Indian Himalayas, but nowadays we do a lot of walking and cycling trips in Europe. We also do some iconic trips like Trans-Siberia and Antarctica kind of cruise expedition. Also, along with all this, we do a lot of leisure also nowadays. Yeah. Avni, now I will kind of hand over the whole thing to you. After this quick introduction, you can feel free to kind of add on anything that I've missed out in your introduction, and would be happy to kind of if you can take us through the under the ocean.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll keep this interactive, and I hope we are not getting too deep into the technical of the scuba diving and keeping this as a more of an experiential journey. Something how we explore mountains and learn so many things from them is something that I have learned from oceans as well. Completely different, completely fascinating world underwater. I would say it's as deep as the mountains are, and maybe even deeper. And the sad part is we can only explore some till to some depth and not beyond that as a recreational diver. But yes, I promise that I'm going to take you down one day for sure to make you experience what is there, and you must see.
Sure, I'm sure. Only quick question: what actually made you kind of decide that you want to go and kind of do this? Because as I said, yeah, I'm scared. I don't want to do it. I can climb mountains, stand on the edge, do anything else but terrestrial, nothing under the waters.
My journey in diving started out of compulsion and not something that I wanted to do or pursue as a hobby. I am an adventure tourism person, so I love and would want to do anything and everything which falls under adventure tourism or adventure sports. Have tried few as well, but this was something which came as a part and parcel of my education. So I studied masters in marine biology from University of Hull in UK. And the first few months were classroom oriented, but then I had chosen to do my master's by research, and I was supposed to go out and survey the reefs and get the data back for my research thesis. And that was the time when we went to Egypt. And 2 weeks before going to Sharm el Sheikh was my professor just asked me in terms of, can you swim? And I said, yeah, I can swim. And he said, okay, let's go to the pool and try out how things are. And then he saw me swimming in a pool. I was fairly comfortable and I could swim how dogs would swim, but I was comfortable with water. So he was completely okay. And that is one of the basic requirements of scuba diving. Then I reached to Sharm el Sheikh and I put the snorkels and the fins and tried to jump into the water, and I couldn't see the bottom and I was completely scared. And I think when we are in pool, because we can see the bottom, doesn't matter how deep it is, we have the security and it's confined. And when I jumped into sea, it was completely
Scuba diving
open. I couldn't see any boundaries.
into the depths.
And I was completely lost and felt out of any context. And that is when I almost drowned my professor, and he kind of kicked me out of the water. And then for next 2 days, he made me swim in a pool almost twice a day with my snorkel and fins to make sure that next time when I went in, I was completely comfortable. We were there for 25 days, and that's when I got comfortable into water. And then when I got comfortable, I saw what the marine life was underwater, and the fish and how everybody else was around was something that got me more intrigued into it. And then I pursued my open water scuba dive certification in Greece, another research trip that we had done. And that's when I kind of called a certified scuba diver.
So Avni, I definitely missed out on your major qualification being a marine biologist. You see? Probably your CV can add up a lot of things more as we go along. Yeah. Perfect. Go ahead. I can see some people dangling on the rope. I've always used ropes only in the mountains. I've never imagined what is this now. Yeah.
But I will something called as safety stops, and we have a guiding line at times when the water is little murkier to guide us where our boat is going to be and to come up. Ideally here in this picture, it's for the safety stop, because after you spend certain amount of time underwater and beyond one depth is when you start accumulating nitrogen in your blood. Coming up very fast up on a surface, and because of the pressure as well, it's very harmful. It can create bubbles, and then it can lead to death as in extremities. And that is why we make safety stops between anything between 3 to 10 meters or 5 to 10 meters of the depth.
So Avni, I have a question here. I've heard about this, that it is very dangerous to come up quickly when you're coming from deep diving. So technically, like in mountains, it is the high altitude sickness, and where you go like you are expected to stop after every 500 meters. So here, when you dive and probably dive quite deep, maybe 40 meters or 50 meters, I don't know what is the limit which you can have. But what are typically stops that one takes? After what intervals?
So ideally, when we are going down, there are no stops. We ascend as fast as we can. The only thing we make sure is that we equalize. So we pop our ears, like how when we go on a flight, our ear blocks, right? Yeah. So we just blow our nose and we try and equalize. If we don't equalize, then you go a little up, so the pressure decreases and it's easy for you to equalize. So the only thing when you are going down is to make sure that you are equalizing well. And if you can't equalize, then your the eardrums can burst. So that is the thing in completely opposite to mountaineering. Like here, when you are coming up is when we have to take more precautions. So 3 to 5 minutes of safety stops is what we definitely do. Major of a good dive centers and good dive masters will ask you to take a safety stop. Doesn't matter how long your dive has been. And that kind of get a lot of nitrogen from your body. And then you slowly surface up. So those are the basic things that you need to take care of.
Perfect. You continue. I will keep interrupting with my questions. Sorry. Yeah.
So I get asked a lot of time, what is the difference between snorkeling, scuba, and free diving? In snorkeling, ideally, you don't have air tank with you, and mind you, it's not an oxygen tank, it's just a normal compressed air in your tank. In snorkeling, you don't have that. You just have a mask and a snorkel, and you are most of the time just swimming on the top of the surface. You can hold your breath and you can go down and then come up. So that's snorkeling. A lot of people do that. Very easy to do and great to explore coral reefs, because coral reefs are usually on kind of a shallow water. So it's a good great start to feel comfortable in open water. Then comes scuba diving, and in scuba diving you can have 3 different certifications: open water and advanced open water. And that is kind of enough for you to be a recreational diver. It allows you to go up to 15 meters and 30 meters of depth, so around 50 feet and 100 feet underwater. And then comes this free dive, where most of the time it is done by professionals for the world record and all of that, and it's kind of an adventure sport a lot of people do. And the highest world record till now has been 214 meters. So
240 meters.
yeah.
Wow.
So that's insane. So my journey in scuba diving, ideally, and my love for deep sea kind of started from Lakshadweep. That's where I worked for 2 years, starting into 36 islands, diving offshore, on offshore reefs, diving from boat, diving from the shore, diving in the lagoon, to completely open water in the middle of nowhere. Is that something that I did for 2 years in Lakshadweep? And as we say, I'm ready to go back to those days, paying anything here. And that is where I also got my advanced open water and rescue diver certification done, because I was dealing with a lot of people, taking them for a lot of snorkeling tours, school kids, a lot of conservation people used to come. So that forced me to do the rescue diver certification as well. Some great corals that we see underwater. This all pictures are mixed from a lot of different places where I have dived at. So not exactly from Lakshadweep. I usually divide the life when somebody would ask you that what do you see underwater is something which is stagnant and something which is moving. So coral reefs, the life which is bound towards the reef, I call them as the stagnant ones because they don't move, while the fish and whales and dolphins and everything fancy is the moving life that we say. So these are the coral reefs of Lakshadweep. On the left, 2 of them. Some is from Egypt here. Some of them are soft corals.
I have a question. Does this life differ a lot as you kind of go in various places?
It does, in terms of what species and what you see. There differs a lot. The kind of coral, some of the corals you will see in Lakshadweep, you will not see in Andaman. Life also varies depth-wise, because some of them, like corals, need sunlight to survive. So because they have photosynthesis happening. So for corals, they need sunlight. So beyond one point, you'll only have soft corals, which needs less light. And then in dark, beyond 50 meters or so, when the light can't penetrate, in that kind of an area, you don't see much of a coral kind of life. You see bioluminescences, you see fish which carries bioluminescence, and those kind of creatures.
So typically the corals are found in what depth, like if one has to kind of, because they need sunlight, you said, so it can penetrate to a certain extent, right?
It varies a lot. Major of the reefs you will see between anything between 35 till 50 meters deep.
Okay.
But again, it varies because sea can have a lot of things. It can have sediments, complete sedimentation as well. The clarity of water at times is not good. So depending on where they are is the depth you will see the corals at.
But usually one can have a range of 30 meters to 50 meters as a range. Okay. And what is this giant calm? What is this like?
So they are like
it's so colorful. Like
So that is where, in what I was working at Lakshadweep, the research that the project that I was working at worked on the conservation of giant clams because they signifies the reef of the health. Various colors you see in them, blue, green, yellow, a lot of them you can see from small to massive as well. They are kind of a clam shells. They are like, the small shells that we eat, but the larger version of it. They are stuck into a reef on a stone or something. So, and they grow quite big. Something which kind of fascinated me a lot underwater are the Christmas tree worms, what you see on the top too.
Yeah, yeah.
They come in various varieties of colors, and which any designer, I would say, would feel ashamed of kind of combinations they come in. They are worms which come out and then they close when something goes nearby them. And they feed through the planktons which are there or the small germs which are there in the water. Sea slug, really nice, fancy, colorful things that you see as well.
They're very colorful ones. Very bright and beautiful colors. Yeah.
Then something else which is like sea cucumbers. They look very ugly and they look like dead cucumber lying on the floor of the sea reef. But people eat them in China, in some part of Lakshadweep as well. The two most dangerous fish that I have faced and got chased by a lionfish one of the time because we kept on clicking a lot of pictures and then it got irritated or whatever. So lionfish and a stonefish is something that they are the most poisonous fish in sea. They both carry poison in their fins. Stonefish has spikes in which they have poison. And at times you cannot spot stonefish at all because they camouflage in their environment immensely. Then you see sea feathers. We call them Spanish dancers because when they actually move in the sea, they look like a Spanish dancer. Then some sea slug eggs is something that you can see here. Then I did find Nemo underwater. Lots of them, got bored of them beyond one point because they were very common. In a good, healthy reef, having a clownfish in certain number is a health defines the health of the reef. Some massive things we saw. So now these are the completely open water dives. The previous pictures were more in a lagoon kind of an area, which are confined waters. This is right away into the wall diving, where you see larger fishes. So humphead parrotfish is ideally a size of a beagle or larger than a beagle as well. Is what it would be. Cuttlefish, very shy, but you see them, they glow. You can see the melanin in their skin moving around if you are nearby. A school of barracudas, which kind of lingered around at the same place most of the time when we dived. And then, yeah, this would be, I think, around 30 meters deep, a sea turtle and some
How big was
parrotfish.
it? How big was it?
The turtle?
Yeah.
I would say quite big. I don't remember how, because this was still a baby, as I would see. We have seen a massive ones as well, in terms of nesting at the beaches in Lakshadweep as well.
Okay.
And when we talk about mountain adventures, we always come across something good and the bad experiences, and we always say bad experiences makes it the most memorable trips. And same here in diving as well. Some of the worst experiences that I have had. One was with the jellyfish, where we had gone for a dive and when we started the dive, we could only see one or two jellyfish and we were completely okay. By the time we were finishing the dive, we started seeing lots and lots of jellyfish, and it was started getting dark because the surface of the water was getting filled. by the jellyfish, and we were panicking because we didn't know how to come up. And we had no option because you're running out of air, you are running out of time, your life is at risk. So we kind of spotted a boat and came up suddenly and jumped into the boat as quickly as we could. We were stung all over.
Oh,
Because in warm water you don't wear full dive suit, so legs, hands, face, a lot of places we got stung, and then I think we literally bathed in a vinegar solution.
but is it poisonous or it just causes irritation?
Jellyfish. This jellyfish are not poisonous.
Yeah.
They have in their sting. They sting. So like you know how a grasshopper stings or something like that, and then you have a massive rash, and it
Mhm.
burns, and then your skin starts getting inflated. So inflammation happens in your skin. So for next 2-3 days you'll see rashes. Your skin's burning. You feel itchy. So it
Oh,
stays there, and the only way you can get rid of it is wash it with either urine or vinegar is what you are
oh,
supposed to do.
okay.
um,
So what about the sharks? You
um,
have kind of encountered the sharks?
yes, a few of them. Some of them are very docile and they don't do anything. These ones are supposed to be very docile, but when we were diving and doing a survey, I think we had only 10 minutes left for our dive, and we saw one shark coming in, and then I was very excited that finally I got a shark to see. And then I saw another one, and I saw another one, and in a minute's time, I had 6 of them,
Wow.
and we were 4 of us diving, and all 6 sharks were encircling us. And the moment we made any move, they kept on coming near and near.
Mhm.
At one point, they're very curious creature, so they came up. At one time, one came nearby and just, like, you know, tried fiddling with my fin. And then that was a scary part, because you know that if they bite, they can actually tear apart your limb. um, we were running out of air. We didn't know what to do, because every time we went up or tried movement, they would come nearby, and that's how sharks hunt. So the only thing we could do was to move to a reef, like towards the wall side, so that because of their sonar, they would not detect us as a separate part of a reef. And then we kept on moving slowly up, and at one point we just kind of got jumped into a boat and kind of felt relief of being on a boat at
My
that
God,
point.
my God. But usually they are harmless, is it? Well, normally they don't harm, is it? And
Ideally not. And major of the reef sharks, they don't do it. So white tip, black tip sharks, they are very harmless. Nurse sharks, they are very harmless. They locate their prey by sonar. So if you go near to the floor, sit near to the floor, or go very close to the wall or any rock, they will not
mhm.
be able to differentiate between you and a rock.
Okay,
So
so they can't visibility. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
so that's what happens.
And how about the whales? Have you kind of come across any whales anytime?
No, I haven't, but I guess that's on my to-do
Bucket
list
list.
as such. Yeah, on my bucket
Okay.
list to dive with few whales as such.
Wow. Uh, yeah. So this is in Thailand, is it?
So yes, one of the major things when people dive or choose to dive is they always ask, what is the visibility?
Hmm.
Because that kind of defines what you will see underwater and what kind of life you will also see. So this was one of the cleanest of the dive sites in Thailand. We very frequently dived at, but that day we don't know for what. It was rainy. There was some undercurrents or whatever. The visibility was 3 to 5 meters, where we could hardly see our buddy or our dive partner.
Hmm.
And completely opposite to that, diving in Iceland in Silfra was a mind-blowing experience, because 100-meter visibility is like a dream come true. It's like not having one bad day in mountains kind of an experience. So and of course, this was the coldest of the temperatures that I had dived in, which was a 3-degree Celsius water, and it was quite mind-blowing.
Uh, uh, is it like it's very cold? Like 3 degrees is very, very cold. So how long you can be in the waters?
So usually when you dive in cold water, you have a dry suit,
Mm-hmm.
and you wear warm clothes inside, like dry warmers and all, and then you wear. So it's like an insulated dive suit that you wear when you're diving in cold water.
Mm-hmm.
So you do feel cold, and you always have like your face is covered, everything. So very less skin exposed to cold water.
Okay. I have one more question for you, Avni. Looking at this picture from Thailand, where the visibility is less. But in the meantime, I just want to kind of inform, there are a lot of questions coming in. So I want to inform everyone that you keep kind of posting your questions. We will list out the questions and kind of ask Avni the relevant questions. We may even open the house so that everyone can interact directly with Avni, and everyone will be kept on mute, but we will kind of go through that at the end of the session. Avni, this looking at this picture, this is like walking in a whiteout. So where
Yes.
your all visual locks are kind of gone. Yeah, and so how in there at least you have kind of compass which can orient you and things like that. So what
Yeah.
do you do for orientation?
So ideally, one of the rules of diving is you always dive with a buddy, and you always dive. You always have a dive master. So who would have kind of experienced, or as a recreational diver, you will always dive with somebody who has dived at the same place multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we do have a compass underwater that we use, but when you are leisurely diving, you cannot count your fin numbers, that how many times I have flipped to the right, how many times I have flipped to the left. So you can never come back to it. But you always have a reference point in terms of either you are diving with I would say wall to your right or to your left or something like that. You can see the boat above, behind, ahead, whatever. So that becomes your reference point. You don't travel so fast underwater, and time goes very quickly when you are there. So that is something which is kind of a safe thing. But yes, at times when you are doing a drift dive.
One second, Navni. So tell me how long you can be under the water with the air tanks, like how long they last.
So again, there are a lot of variables, because the deeper you dive, you can spend less time. Doesn't matter how much air you have, because
Mhm.
it's kind of related to how much nitrogen you are building in
Mhm.
your blood. So deeper you go, the more nitrogen you are going to build, and that means you can spend less time at the depth. So there is an entire dive table that you learn through when you take your dive course, to measure at what depth how much time you can spend. And
Okay.
then so that it's an entire calculation. Shallow the depth, the longer time you can spend. And also the ideally tank also varies a lot. The more comfortable you become, less air you are going to consume, because your breathing is going to be more synchronized and rhythmic, while if you panic, you anyways tend to consume more air. So it varies.
Perfect. Perfect. There are a lot of questions coming in, Avni. We will have to kind of go for
Yeah,
probably we'll have to hang around for Q&A session for a half an
no
hour or so.
problem.
Yeah, but we'll run through the session first. Yeah.
So I think everybody has the mountain or the trails they want to climb to, like you and I definitely have the places we want to go. Bucket list. I have a bucket list of the dives that I definitely want to do.
Mhm.
One of them was diving with manta rays, and this was completely unexpected. 45 minutes of interaction on a very shallow 10-meter depth with manta rays. They came, they played, they inspected us in terms of, like, they are very curious. So they come up very close to see. So they kind of saw, at times they would just swim by your face. Kind of experience we had. And this was something amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, and then my list of dives that I definitely want to do is dive or snorkel with blue shark, definitely dive with killer whales if I don't get tossed as their toy or a food or considered as a seal. Dive with hammerheads. And of course, I want to see how big the icebergs are underwater. So that
Wow.
definitely I'm going to do it with you next time.
Antarctica. Okay. But I don't know whether they offer diving on the normal cruises that you do. One thing I definitely missed in my trip, and I keep saying that I had no imagination of how it would be. They have this kayaking that is done.
Yes.
Kind of you can choose to do that as an activity, and I completely miss on that. I missed out on that. Yeah. So yes,
Nice.
probably even this can be on the agenda. Yeah.
So yes, this is what
So this is
my
your bucket list.
yes, that's my diving bucket list as such.
Perfect. Perfect.
And coming back to basics of, so that's been my diving journey. I make sure that I dive more often. If you don't dive very often, then you have to get your certification renewed and all that
Mhm.
happens. But I hope this year I can go diving. At least there is no coronavirus underwater. So I'm hoping that I can do that. But the basics, there are some 60 plus certifying agencies through which you can get your diving certification done. Most widely accepted is PADI and CMAS, and PADI is a more of a recreational diver certification. Um, there are some prerequisites like you have to be 10 years plus, you have to be comfortable in water, you should be able to swim around 200 meters and float easily. So be basically comfortable. I always laugh at people when they say that, like, I can't scuba dive or I can't swim, and I always say that you have to drown in scuba dive, so don't worry about it.
That's
um,
true.
and most of the basic courses require 4 to 7 days. If you want to go beyond that, which is a scuba dive master or something, then you have to have more days. Number of dives needs to increase. Number of time spent underwater also needs to increase. Um, and cost varies anything from 18,000 rupees onward, depending on which dive center you are going with and all. Um, Nearest places you can dive or get your certification in India from is Goa, Andaman, Nicobar, Lakshadweep, and other countries as Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. Um, and the few basics, I would always say that when you go for your first diving experience, just make sure that you dive at a good place and not diving in murky waters, because that kind of sets a little bit of scared kind of a feeling when you can't see underwater what's there. But if you dive at a good place where you can see good marine life, it kind of, you forget everything else, all the jing bang around you, all the dive and your jacket and your buoyancy, and everything gets forgotten when you start seeing the fish underwater. So dive at a good place for your first experience. And again, PADI has various certification levels. So starting from open water to adventure diver to advanced open water. And then you can do different skills, learn different skills in that. So you can be a drift diver, you can be a dry suit, you can be an underwater naturalist, or you can be a fish person, you can do a deep dive, you can do a nitrox dive with which you can dive to 64 meter. You can do deep rack diving or ice diving. So those are the different specialities that you can do when you do PADI, and the same with other certification levels as well. And yeah, so
But
that's where I stand.
before, tell me, I'm sure in this whole thing you must have gone through some. We can see all the wow experience because with the kind of marine life that you can see, which is so colorful, so beautiful. But I'm sure there would be some kind of very crazy or scary experience that you must have gone through. Which are like really a kind of a nightmare. What the hell, where we are, and what we can do. So, was there any experience like that?
Yes, so one of the days when we had gone for a dive, normal dive, it was supposed to be a survey dive, around 20-25 meter deep. And when we started the dive, we realized that there was current. And we were kind of prepared for it because we had dived at the edge of the island a lot of times at the same places. But that day was something different. We don't know what, but the current was really strong. We were 6 of us diving together. And usually we'll have 100-meter transaction line. So, and then everybody is placed on that transact to survey and monitor what is there and write down and all. And then suddenly I see 3 of them coming towards me, swimming really fast. And I thought something went wrong. And then I realized that they could never reach me because I was also drifting away with them. And the drift was so strong that we didn't realize where we were headed or where we were going. By the time we realized, and then of course in a drift dives or when there are underwater currents, there is a amazing marine life because it brings in a lot of nutrients. So you see big fish, you see sharks, you see turtles, you see massive schools of fish. So we were very excited seeing all that, not realizing how far we were drifting. And when we got done with our dive and we were trying to spot our boat, we couldn't spot our boat. Our boat guy couldn't spot us. And then we were lingering on the surface for around 1 hour, waiting for our boat guys to spot us and come to us. That was quite scary because it was in the evening time, the sunset was happening, and then we didn't know where to go. If we had to swim to the shore, it would have been really long swim.
And
So
probably with the currents, swimming
really
will be also very difficult, isn't it, Avni?
On the surface, it would have been fine because on the surface, the currents were not very strong. It was okay, but the shore was quite far. Like we could see some trees away, not knowing how far that place is going to be.
My goodness.
We were quite stuck in middle of nowhere, and we thought the castaway kind of scene was going to happen. But then finally the boat spotted us. So that was a good thing after I think 1.5 hour of floating on the water with all the equipments and everything. So that was the scariest of the experience I have had.
My goodness, that's quite scary. You have scared me off again. I thought I will do it at some point of time, but now I'm scared again. Okay.
We should start the presentation again so you should see the good moments.
Anyway, I think Avni, fantastic. We have a lot of questions that have come in and various types again. But Nichiketa, if you're there, can we open the house where people can raise the questions and ask questions directly to Avni?
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, so I will announce in the meantime the way it will be done. We will open the house where like anyone who wants to interact with Avni can have a kind of word directly with Avni, ask any questions that you have in mind. The only thing is everybody will be kept on mute. Those who have questions can raise their hands and then they can interact with other. If I open up everyone, then it gets a little chaotic. That's the reason everyone will be on the mute. Those who raise their hand, we will they can interact with Avni. We'll unmute them. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I'm unmuting Mr. Abdul from Brilliance Holiday. He has a lot of questions, and so I'm just unmuting him.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's a lovely presentation and a lot of information about the underwater world. It's a different kind of experience and different kind of world it is. I have a few questions.
Yeah.
I have done a lot of island hopping in my past experience. I want to know which part of Thailand is better to do a underwater diving, whether it's Krabi, Koh Samui, or Phuket.
I would say none of them. Krabi has some really good dive sites you can go to, but Koh Tao area and Koh Samui also is a decent diving places. The thing with Thailand right now is it is over tourism. Because of over tourism, the diving there and the reefs there are quite damaged. So as for my experience, I have dived at major of the places and I would still choose Koh Samui over anything else to dive in Thailand.
Okay. My next question is, do you require any professional training for this diving?
Yes, you do. If you want to frequently dive and dive unassisted, So you can do Discover Scuba, which is a guided diving, which a diver will manage all your buoyancy and everything and hold you and take you deep down. But the way, if you see me in pictures, if you would want to dive like that, you do need a certification.
Okay. And any health certificate is required for diving?
Yes, a certification from your doctor that you are healthy to dive, and like, you know, like any holiday, adventure holiday that you will take in, and the kind of certification that you will require, a letter from doctor is required for you.
Now, these diving packages will be a part of including the insurance, or we have to buy a separate?
Major of the times there are a lot of international travel insurances in which you have diving included in them as well, but you can always buy a separate diving insurance, and usually all the diving companies or the agencies will give you dive insurance.
Okay, I also heard that for a honeymooners they do a couple diving package also. It is available there?
In Lakshadweep, I'm not sure. A lot of other places, yes, they do, but I don't know what honeymooners will do underwater together because you have a mask on.
um, because I have seen a lot of videos, and this one they do a after a wedding they do a underwater diving package for a honeymooner, especially in Maldives. I have heard about this.
So I think it would be somewhere where you are diving with your partner as a buddy, or you do the certification together. That could be the case. But it's quite in terms of course, you can see that we saw this together, but it is not something that you can handhold and dive.
And what is the basic cost of a underwater diving for a basic one, if you want to opt?
So the basic certification, which is the open water dive certification, which allows you to dive till 15 meters deep, will cost you anything from 15,000 rupees onwards, depending on where you are diving, only for the certification. Your stay, your travel, everything is separate in that.
Thank you, Avni. Thank you so much, and it's pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Nichiketa, can we move on to the next question? I'm
Yes.
sure there are many, but we'll kind of try to wrap it up a bit faster.
Yes.
So take the important ones, or yeah, please.
Yeah. So Preeti Doshi has a question. She's
Yeah.
asking, is there any age limit for these adventure, and is knowing swimming mandatory?
No, hi Preeti. Knowing swimming is not mandatory, as I had said earlier. You need to be comfortable in water. You should be able to float. As I said, that I was scared when I first started snorkeling, not seeing the depth or not seeing how vast the ocean can be. So you generally need to be okay with sea. Knowing swimming comes handy because you become right away, you are more comfortable in water, but you don't need to be pro at swimming. There is no age group as such. You need to be 10 years plus and be medically fit to dive. So no upper limit age bar as such.
Perfect.
The next question is from Mrudul Modi, and this is he's asking, is it, just give me a moment. Okay, so the next question is from Mrudul Modi. Is it true if you hit shark on the snout, they go away?
Yeah, they do actually.
That's crazy. Oh, really?
Actually, they don't go away, but that is kind of the numb point. So usually when the shark comes near, they say that you should hit shark in the nose, which kind of you can sometimes miss because their nose is very sharp, and then there are jaws just below that. But yes, it is true.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from Nishan. Have you done cavern diving? Is it? I think I'm pronouncing it correct. It's CAVERN.
Yeah, cavern driving. So
Cavern driving.
Yeah, so ideally I would say that it would be a cave diving. Yes, I have very scary, very claustrophobic kind of a feeling, because when you enter a cave, you don't know where you are headed. You cannot see the surface above. So you feel kind of scared, but it's a different experience, different life altogether in the cave. So it's kind of nice. It's good fun.
I have Mrudul Modi again. He has a question. I'll just unmute him. Just give me.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Mr.
Are
Modi.
you able to hear me?
Yes, yes, we are able to hear you.
Yeah. Basically, what I wanted to ask was that are there any safety standards available for scuba diving and things like that? And how familiar would you be with safety standards?
So ideally, I can speak of PADI very well, because that's the organization that I have got my certification from. So what you should be sure of is who you are diving with is something that we as a divers always look for. So PADI has a certification level or the star rating for each of the dive centers, which starts from 1 star to 5 star. So those certification of or the rating of the dive resorts or dive centers are based on how good they are, how good their dive masters are, how well they keep their equipment, and what has been their diving rate. So something like a reference point. So that is something that you should definitely make sure that when you choose a dive center, that you choose a good one with good reviews, more number of people who would have dive, and more experienced dive master who would have more number of hours logged as their dives. And that information is usually available at the dive center, and you can always ask for it. So those are the things that you should definitely make sure.
But only
But
the
are
question.
there any ISO standards? Are there any ISO standards for this?
For the dive schools, no, there are not. There is another dive certification level, which is an ISO certification level, but that is more of a commercial diving certification and not a leisure.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Nijiketa, any more questions?
Yes, last question of the evening is from Mrs. Sanjay Thomas, and he's asking, once outside water, is there a way to communicate with a boat if one has drifted considerably? As you narrated about the...
I didn't know. Now a lot of equipments has come up in terms of that you can have a mic in your mask, but ideally no, there is nothing like that. When we dive, we always carry float with us, which is tied into our jacket. So when we are supposed to come up on the surface, we usually put air in our float and float it up onto the surface. So that's when my boat knows where I am located.
Only one funny thing that one question you will never get, which we always get out on any of the trips, whether the mobile connectivity is there.
What? Sorry?
Mobile connectivity is there.
No mobile connectivity underwater.
Anyway, I think, Nijiketa, have we handled most of the questions?
Yes, we've taken all the questions.
Perfect. So before we kind of say thank you to Avni and all our guests, I would also like to make one more announcement. Next Saturday, we are going to have a kind of guest. He is Mr. Gopal Krishna. He has made a coffee table book on Ganesh Utsav or Ganesh festival. And we are soon approaching the Ganesh festival in the next week after that. So I thought it will be a great idea to kind of have an interaction with him, with all the, I'm sure the Ganesh festival is not going to be celebrated this year usually the way it is. So it would be a great idea to kind of have an interaction with Gopal to go through his entire journey of making the coffee table book and how the Ganesh festival is celebrated out in Bombay. And I'm sure we'll get to see some great pictures of Ganpati and the festive activity that happens during that time. So we kind of look forward to kind of seeing all of you on next Saturday. And thank you once again, Avni, to you for taking us through some fantastic pictures and world under the sea, I would say. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our guests. Thank you so much. Yeah. Avni, thanks a lot. Bye-bye. And see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're coming for EBC.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.